Good morning, Fairfield friends. It's Bob Ferguson again here with Mayor Connie Boyer, and we were puzzling about what to call this particular interview. And so we're going to call it Moving Fairfield Forward, the infrastructure version. And we're going to be talking about some infrastructure projects that are going around town. Some that have created some real heartburn and contention, and talk about what is about those and other things. So, Mayor Connie, delightful to have you here with me today.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. And really, thanks for serving the community in this way. I think it's important. I mean, we in the last couple years, well, in the last few years, have tried to do different ways to communicate to the community. And, some work better than others. And we're still trying to figure out all of the formulas that really work. So anyway, we're continuing to work on these different issues of communication. So, but first, let's just address the elephant in the room. Because, and you mentioned it, the heartburn in our community over the summer, and that has to do with Walton Lake. So I really want to just highlight some of the things that are the facts of the matter, and some of what we see the good coming out of this, some of the positives. And so let's address some of those. First of all, and I'm going to do high level. I'm not going to get in the weeds of numbers and all that kind of thing. Anybody can call and talk to me if they want a little more detail. That would be fine. So let's get into it. First of all, the residents who live on the lake, one of the big issues was they didn't want the lake drawn down. And I get that, yeah, it's reasonable. I'd like to live on a lake too. But it is a man-made lake. And when we have a man-made lake, sometimes we have to do maintenance items. And in this case, one of the main things happened to be the bridge. That was deemed that it should be, what do I want to say? I'm looking for the word.
Demolished because
Demolished. But it's
the load
condemned.
level
That's the
was
word I'm looking
zero, right?
for.
The
Condemned last
load
year.
capacity was zero.
Right. So it was condemned. All that infrastructure underneath in the water needed to be replaced. So, we looked at different options. And when the controversy started, and I have to say this at the very beginning before we get into that level, is that at the very beginning, when people came to council, it was a very tough meeting. And I myself got frustrated because I saw the council who works hard. They don't get paid very much. And they take their job seriously and try to do the right thing. And, I believe that they do the right thing. And so, I got frustrated. I communicated in a way that was not effective. I know that I did that. I take responsibility for that. I expressed my frustration that they hadn't been paying attention. We want an informed citizenry in our community. We want people to be engaged. I have communicated that ever since I've been mayor. But my message was not received well, and I understand why, and I have to do a better job. So I know that. I take full responsibility for that. And I still believe that we're friends and neighbors, and we need to communicate civilly to each other, and even when we're frustrated. So that set aside, let's talk about again. So when the residents came and they said they didn't want the lake drawn down, and here was this inexpensive bridge that we could put up instead. If you really looked at all the facts of how to do the infrastructure without drawing down the lake, the expense went way up. And we spent all summer listening to what they were telling us and trying to find ways to accommodate. We looked at how you can put rock in the bottom of the lake so that to build that up so that Drish could go get in there and do it without drawing down the lake. We looked at what's called a cofferdam. That estimated to be about $100,000. Um, so those are just a couple of the things. I mean, literally, we spent those summer months trying to look at different things, talking with DNR. And, because there were a lot of complaints to DNR got laser focused on Fairfield. And they also wanted to make sure that we did the right thing. So one of the things that came out of that was to put in a big box square culvert versus these round culverts. And that allowed for more water flow. So I think that was a real positive, for the lake. So one of the things that, as we see now, let's look at the silver lining. Oh, but I wanted to mention that it has been said that we are drawing down the lake illegally. That is not true. So there's 2 permits that the city has to have. One is to draw down the lake. We have that permit. Okay. The second permit, which we are waiting on, which we think we will get very soon, has to do with the construction or the reconstruction of that culvert and that bridge area. Okay, so 2 things: one to tear down and draw down, and one to rebuild. So we have the first one, waiting on the second one. So we are doing everything by the book.
Yeah, no, Connie, I think one thing is important there. We actually do have a permit to build the bridge with the 42-inch, 8 42-inch pipes. We could build that, but based on conversation and based on conversation with the DNR, I think it was the DNR's position that a 8 by 10 foot box culvert would be better for the water flow, would
Yes.
actually allow their boats. I mean, you know, at least the DNR boats, to get in to both, to all the areas of the lake.
Yeah.
And so, it wouldn't probably be reasonable to assume that we would not get a permit for
Right.
a
Right.
bridge construction type that the DNR itself thought would be a superior one. But
Yeah.
we are waiting for that. But
Yeah. And because there has been such controversy, they are making sure that they are dotting every T, no, crossing every T and dotting every I, right? They want to make sure that they are doing everything by the book as well. So, they're doing that because, there has been some hearings related to that. Um, they're just being very careful too. And they spent about 3 hours down here last week. Some really good things came out of that. The city had proposed putting in a ramp in a certain area. Again, residents weren't very happy with that, but DNR came down and said, no, I don't want it there because it's not deep enough. So they have found another place. It's on this, my understanding is on the southeast part of the main dam. And on the north part, we don't think we need to put in a ramp. So again, it's not a dock, it's a ramp. And but it has to be deep enough to get their big boat in there. So one of the things that we're doing also is we're having French Reniker do a drone mapping of the lake. That will help us going forward. That's really important. Um, Also, I think this will help us improve the quality of the lake. And we have found some infrastructure things that we would not have known had the lake not been drawn down. For example, on the north side of the road, one of the wings that holds up that road apparently it's in bad shape. And so we've got to rebuild that. We would not have known that if we had not drawn down. Now, so that's one thing that has to be fixed. Um, Again, soon as that lake is past the bridge, and we believe there will be some pockets of water on the south side of the lake. But that allows Drish to get in there, remove that bridge, and clean up everything that's just not in good shape underneath there. There's got to be some reconstruction of the abutments. They plan to dig out some of the dirt on the north side of the bridge, if you will, and not of the Walton Road, but of the bridge. And some of that will get used to build up those abutments. So one of those things that also was looked at, I'm sorry, I'm digressing a little bit, but was there were talked about piers being driven into the water. So again, you didn't have to draw down the lake to hold up a bridge. Again, to do that was really expensive. And I don't remember the number, but you know, it just didn't make sense financially for us to consider that. So a couple other things. I mentioned the abutment, the road abutment that has to be fixed, plus the bridge abutment. And we're hoping that we can also start fixing the shoreline, because what's happening is the lake is cutting into the shoreline. So over time, everybody's yards are going to be shrinking if we don't do something about that. So we are hoping that, and Doug Reinert seemed to think that we hopefully we'll be able to get that done while this lake is drawn down. And that's important for every homeowner out there. There's another section over by hole 1 that I have been told that the shoreline has been cut in by several feet. And so we want to get that fixed. The sooner we get that fixed, the better. The invasive carp that are there, unfortunately, yes, some of those are going to die. But in the end, that's a good thing for the lake because they kind of take over. And while we're doing all of this, Bob has talked to someone that he knows really well that understands this topic. We have the Resilient Action Committee who have looked into DNR projects and how that works to do a full restoration of the lake. So that's coming down the years later, but because that takes some major planning and it's going to take some saving, I think, from the city to do that. But it's
Yeah.
put the attention on these lakes, and so I think in the end will have a positive effect.
Yeah, I think just a comment on that. The person we're talking about is Leland Searles. He has done quite a bit of work here. I don't know if some of you who are watching this may remember the bridge storming effort we did, I think 2017, 2018, where a whole bunch of us got together in a very organized effort and we mapped every culvert and every bridge in Jefferson County for wildlife passage. This was in the context of the potential to rewild some of the land in the county that floods frequently, that isn't, is becoming, less viable for cropland. So, Lee is, I think, without hyperbole, one of the real deans of ecology in Iowa. And he's coming down on his own hook next week to talk with Doug and other people about other mitigation efforts that we can do that would establish more wetlands in critical areas, be buffers for silt coming into the water. I did some research, and yes, it's possible to completely restore a lake like that, but you're talking about half a generation. I mean, it's expensive. There's huge numbers of permits. So we're not talking about full restoration, but we are talking about things that we can do, and maybe more than we would have done initially just by virtue. One of the silver linings is, okay, a lot of attention on this. What
Yep.
can we do if we're doing this thing that is upsetting people, drawing down the lake? You know, let's make the greatest advantage out of that we possibly can. And that's my perspective. I wasn't involved. I'm not on the city council. I'm a private citizen at this point. But I believe, and should I be elected and running unopposed, I suppose there's a pretty good chance I'll be elected. Um, one of my one of my emphases is to work with the RAC, work with the great work that's been done, and the work that's being done even for some mitigation on the other two lakes, to really make Fairfield an exemplar of ecological practice as a town. There are some things that we're doing, as I understand, that could be done in a more ecologically friendly way. Well, if I have my my say, and I suppose I will, we'll be putting our attention on that. No promises about anything, but we're going to be putting our attention on that because I think one of the cool factors, and Fairfield's very cool. People come and say, "Wow, I didn't think a place like this existed." One of the cool factors is our focus on sustainability. And I think that we can be much more consistent across the board. There are people who are not only interested in but working with beavers. Okay, well, what can we do with that? I mean, there's just a host of things that we can do that would make our town much more ecologically friendly, our lakes better quality, and improve the quality of life for everyone. And to me, as a guy who's interested in the general quality of life in Fairfield and specifically our attraction of other people, this is all to the good.
So just a couple last things about the lakes. One of the, again, comments was that if we use water to water the greens, it would cost thousands of dollars. So yes, a hose was hooked up to a fire hydrant to water the greens, but that was just recently. So in some ways, all of the controversy over the summer delayed things, and we didn't use potable water right from the hydrant to water the greens. So that just happened last week, and we've spent $144. If you would have had to buy that water, that's how much it would have cost. So it's not going to cost the city or the taxpayers thousands of dollars. Again, as of Wednesday, technically you could say we have spent $144. And now that the weather's cooler, there'll be very little watering. I haven't talked to Larry Paget specifically about that, about how much more he thinks he's going to have to use, but it's going to be small. So we're not going to be spending thousands of dollars. So I want people to put you at ease about that's not happening. Also want to mention that, on number 2 pond or Pleasant Lake, when you grow up here, it's number 2 pond. And many people don't know that Waterworks and Pleasant Lake and Walton Lake were part of our water system, and it's still part of our water system. We used to use surface water. Now we use a Jordan well, but it is our backup system. If for some reason, we couldn't get water from the Jordan well, we would go back to surface water. So we need to keep this infrastructure in place. However, there has been private citizens who have been helping with the filtration, the silt filtration into number 2 pond. They have worked with farmers who own that land north of number 2 pond, and they got a grant and put in different filtration systems. Some of it's set back, but some of it is actual things they put in along the edge of the lake there. They're also planning, again, a bridge that's somewhat similar to what's at Walton Lake, although I think it will be more of a two-trail bridge there. I don't think it'll be a box culvert, but I don't know that for sure. And some jetties that's on the very north finger of that lake. And in the end, it'll do at least a couple things. Number one, it'll help the silt from going into the main part of the lake. And number two, it will allow us to have the trail to be pretty much clear around that lake. So you can have a nice walking path. Again, there'll be the small finger that goes clear north that you won't go around, but it will allow you to go around that whole lake, which is pretty cool. All right, so those are the two things that I wanted to mention. So let's talk about other infrastructure. Everybody knows we're working on the fire station, right? We are waiting for the walls to come in. The walls are being built in Mount Pleasant. Isn't that cool? Just down the road. So, and they have been in the last 2 or 3 weeks um, putting down cement in different areas. If you can see that big thing out there on the construction site. So we're waiting for the walls to come in. Once those walls come in, it'll go up pretty quickly. So that's really exciting. So when the fire station gets all done, obviously we move out of the old fire station and we have empty space. So we've got to figure out what to do with that. We also have, when we talk about infrastructure, we have the old Roosevelt School that's not being fully utilized. So we need to put some brain power to that. And at City Hall, we have some growing pains. We're kind of running out of room. We're going to do a little bit of moving people around for the short duration. We are currently working on a survey. We worked at this at the work session in October, just with the council a little bit, just to get their first ideas of how they see us using these buildings. And the questions that we did were interesting. They came out different than what I kind of anticipated. So we decided to do also a survey with the rest of our staff. We're working on a survey with the community. And then once those are compiled, what we're going to do is put together a task force to really talk about how do we go forward? What's the best use of these buildings? Can we get down to 2 buildings versus 3? We know that the state legislature is still working on trying to lower property taxes, which unless they backfill it some other way back to the city, we're going to get squeezed some more. So we have to be cognizant of that. And if we have 2 buildings versus 3 and get 1 back on the tax roll, I think that's a good thing for city government. It's a good thing for the taxpayer. It's less utilities. So we don't know what that's going to look like, but we're going to be asking for city input on that. So we have that coming forward. On a couple small things, we know that the efficiency and effectiveness of our city website is marginal. We know we need to work on that. And we've been gathering ideas, making lists of how that should work better. Again, approving our notification system to people. You can sign up right now for Park and Rec alerts, and you can sign up for alerts at City Hall. You'll get alerts like, well, there's a water main break in a certain area. But it's kind of limited, so we're looking for a better system. And so that's coming. This last year, there were a couple nice things that were built in our parks. At Chautauqua Park, we have new bathrooms. Those were donated by the Ed and Darlene Felger estate. What a beautiful gift to Fairfield. And they also made sure that we have a police dog. Ed was a police officer in Fairfield. They didn't have any children. So what a gift they have given to Fairfield. Hmm. So if the Fairfield, the city government will take gifts, right? So along with that, we'd like to see a new bathroom at Waterworks Park. That bathroom is really old. And we originally thought we could do a bathroom in both of those parks, but they're just way more expensive than what we anticipated. So we got one done. I'm hoping in the next couple of years, we can get another one done. That also leads to our poor state public bathrooms uptown. Beautification Commission is really trying to find grants for that. We have a little bit of seed money from RAGBRAI to start that process. But again, that's something that I've been harping on for 6 years, trying to go, okay, let's fix it or tear it down or something. So, and along with that may be as far as a city hall, if we retool something, could that public bathroom be in City Hall? Is it important to have City Hall downtown? So those are some of the questions we're going to be asking. We would, in a perfect world, we'd have a public bathroom space and a employee bathroom. So that there's a separation there.
Well, and being on the Beautification Commission, and apparently, according to Doug, I'm going to have to graduate out of the Beautification Commission, but I'll still be a volunteer. But yeah, I am personally excited about what we can do at that place, not, rebuilding completely, but using the footprint that we've got,
Yeah.
really create a welcome center, a really beautiful welcome center that happens to have bathrooms,
Yeah.
but it won't be manned, but there's all kinds of wonderful potential for electronic displays and potentially occasionally at an event, have some vending in there. But yeah, it really making when you come into Fairfield, Heritage Park is so beautiful, right? Now that it doesn't have any weeds in it.
Right? There's no weeds because Bob.
No weeds. And then if we rebuild that, the bathroom area into a really welcoming welcome station center that actually has bathrooms, well, to me, that's great because when we have events downtown, we need to have police places for people to go to the bathroom.
Right. Yeah. The other thing that happened this last year is Mr. Joe Mandarino, who's incredibly generous. He's a big supporter of the library and supports the library in different ways. But he came to us. 10 years ago, he built this skate park down at Obie Nelson Park.
Mhm.
And he wanted to see it sandblasted again and get all the graffiti off. And he also wants to put a light there. So that's still in process. But he wanted to see a new shelter. The shelter that was there is, the cement's all cracked and it was an old metal thing and it's not very attractive. It hasn't come down yet, but he did donate enough money. We built a shelter that looks just like the shelter near the Castle Park. And again, it's over by the skate park. It's beautiful. I think about the first weekend that it was open, there was a family there having a birthday party. My husband and I were out on a walk, and there were people using it. It was just, and we talked to them, and they were just so excited and appreciative. And the kids were having fun in the skate park bowl, and it just was a really neat event to see. So that happened, which was really cool. Um, what else do we want to talk about? Let's just talk about some wish list items. Couple things. And these are for the teens and the young people. So, and this came through the middle school. There are some kids who think we ought to have a pump track. And the first time I got the email, I went, "What the heck is a pump track? I don't know what that is." So just think of a dirt track with a motorcycle. It's up and down and around curves and on banks, but you go on it with your roller skates, your roller blades, your scooter, your bicycles. What fun. What fun for kids, and could be fun for adults if you're brave enough. Probably not for me because I'm afraid I would break something. But at any rate, they even told me what they wanted, how they wanted it to look. So I've got a drawing of what they would like it to look like. And I think there is a place at Obie Nelson Park where it should be, which was, again, their suggestion. Now it is bringing together the power of those kids to help fundraise, because I want them to be the driver of this process. It's their idea. And that's how we get kids involved civically, even as young people. So that's a wish list item. We'll see if we can get there. I know that Calvin would like to have a splash pad somewhere. He and I have talked about that for years. Having a splash pad in one of our city parks where it's easy to take your toddlers and, the water comes up out of the ground and that's fun. The other thing Calvin would like to see is a fully ADA accessible playground at Obie Nelson Park. And I think his plan is to put that where that old shelter is that will come down. That would be a great thing for our community to have. I think maybe he's got that in his budget somewhere. I'm hoping that sooner than later. Definitely will be adding to the Castle Park over time. It's interesting, this last week I spent a whole day in the 7th grade as they're asking me about what the mayor does and what the city council does, because they're going to be writing an essay if I were a mayor. And what a fun day to be with those kids. They're very bright. and asked really good questions. So I think we'll get some good essays this year. We want to continue to maintain and grow our tree diversity program. The Arbor Committee has been amazing. They have applied for grants through Alliance Trees Forever program and other places, and we've planted a lot of trees, or I should say they have planted a lot of trees in different areas. You know, a few years ago, the emerald ash borer came through and killed a lot of trees, and that's happened from time to time with different types of trees. So that's why we got to have a big, diverse number of trees so that, you know, we don't get wiped out with just one type of tree. So that's happening. We would like to still get wayfinding signage downtown, you know, to direct people who don't know where to go in our town. Then let's talk about Main Street. Now, this isn't necessarily infrastructure, if you will. It's not going to be necessarily new infrastructure, but it is retooling what we have. So think about when these buildings down around the square were built. Many times it was the shopkeeper living upstairs. In the morning, he would go down to his shop and his store and open up. And that's how we functioned, right? In the 1800s or early 1900s. Well, that's way different today. People don't necessarily live like that today. So we have to rethink what are the good uses of those upstairs part of those buildings. And we've already seen some of that happen. We've got several apartments up there that people live in, and some condos, which are great. So we need to continue to work on that because there's some buildings that need some help. Previously, the county had what's called a certified local government, and that allowed property owners to get historic tax credits when they were fixing up their buildings. So Mandy Ford is the champion of this, and we're trying to get that reinstalled so we can have those historic tax credits. And then with Main Street, there are guidelines that we can follow as people fix up their buildings. What are those guidelines to keep the historic significance of that building? And so the city council will be looking at that this next year. So that's cool. And Bob's worked on this, which is the downtown sidewalks. I would like to really get a more comprehensive sidewalk plan working with downtown. And that's in its infant stages. Thanks to Bob, thanks to Deb Williamson. We know kind of what the least level is we have to do to make it better. But how do we maintain that going forward? It's been 20 years really since we've had a hard look out in the neighborhoods. And again, I would like to, you know, like every year do this, you know, do a different ward and have people really say, okay, you know, I need 3 blocks of my sidewalk fixed.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can create a list of everybody who needs some work and then hire one contractor to go do those little things, you know, those little pieces that need fixed. Sometimes it's really hard for a homeowner to do. Either they don't have the skill, or it's hard to find people who do small projects like that. So maybe that's the way to do it collectively. I know previously some neighbors did that. So I think that's a good way to attack that issue. And I'd just like to see it get on a regular program. The last thing that I want to mention is that next year, 2026, is the USA's 250th birthday. And we should have a nice celebration for Fairfield, pretty much week long. We know that right now, I've been talking to different people. I've already talked to Jim Edgerton, and there's a band concert on that Tuesday night. So we have that figured out. I think Jim is going to get his jazz band together to have another concert. I have a contact into the National Guard. I'm really hoping that will work out for our community, that we can have the National Guard band here. And of course, we always have fireworks that night. Another thing that I would like to see is we've got people in our community who studied the Constitution. If you're listening, call me, send me an email. I'd like to put a little judging group together and maybe have some essays written by lower school, middle school, high school, and have a contest. And we can figure out what that question will be, what we want the essay to be. But I think it would be an important lesson for our kids to think about, our Constitution, why it's worked for 250 years. And I think that would be a fun thing for our community. And again, I want to see some other things. So if you're interested in participating on that level, again, give me an email, a shout, call me, and tell me where you want to plug in.
Terrific. Well, that's a lot. That's a lot. We could keep going, but
Right.
this is really good, Connie. And I think that to reiterate, pardon me, your door is open, and
Absolutely.
people still have questions about controversial issues. Get a hold of you,
Yeah.
and
Please.
yeah,
I spend a lot, it's amazing. I spend a lot of time either before I go to work, maybe over my lunch hour, after work, and on weekends to talk to people, have meetings with them. I had a meeting, like last Sunday, somebody came to me about a particular issue, and I said, just come over, let's talk about it. So we spent an hour on Sunday morning. So that does happen a lot.
yeah, and one thing I might mention, because I think some people are a little curious again about what I'm going to be up to or what my ideas governing philosophy is in terms of city government. And here it is in a nutshell. The city government is responsible for keeping the lights on, the water flowing, the streets, the sidewalks, all that kind of stuff. There aren't enough people in the city to come up with all the bright ideas. And there certainly anyone in the city government can come up with a bright idea, right? As a citizen. But when the magic happens is when the city government enables in every way they possibly can, including better communication and just more, top down, bottom up with sanction from the top. I started to think about all of the things over many, many years, but certainly over the last 40 years that have helped define the value of life in Fairfield. Pardon me. And let's take the FACC, two people's vision, right? 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The loop trail. Ron Blair had the idea. We should have a loop trail. Golden Magnolia, Tammy Hassler, and her partner to begin with. If you look at in any business, it's a gleam in someone's eye, and then they bring people around them. So I really feel like, the most important thing that we can do as a city is to empower individuals to feel like they have agency and efficacy. They
Absolutely.
can they can cause and bring about what happens, what they want. They can make happen what they want. They can cause it, bring it about. They can make common cause. And when I bring people through, including the Intelligent Community Forum site reviewer, that's one of the things that they mention. He said it's just astonishing how much bubbles up and gets supported
Yeah.
here in Fairfield.
Absolutely.
And I think that, you know, the city government is there to make sure the infrastructure.
Yeah.
The city and
Yeah.
county
We bring you the
government.
basics.
Yeah, we
But
do the
also,
basics.
we want to create a fertile ground through our ordinances, through the things that we do at the city level to make sure that it's appropriate so that what you want to do, that's there, that you can do it. And if it's not there, do we need to change something at the city level to make that happen? Right? And I think certainly in the last 6 years, the city council and city staff have certainly been open to that. We have done things in the zoning and the ordinances, just as an example in the housing area, right? A lot of these small lots you couldn't build a house on because we had a minimum of how big your house had to be. And so that has been accommodated now.
Yeah.
So that's just one example.
Yeah, it's great. Well, I joke with people, but it's not really. It's really quite serious. I tell people that in the last years, if I have a bright idea that needs some city support, I go have coffee with Bountiful Bakery with SR Place with Connie, and I pitch the idea, and I've never heard a no. Of course, I always bring good ideas, I think anyway. But
Yeah.
I think that quality is what will continue to bring our community up. And, we have a great place. And, I think it's incumbent on all of us to be as engaged as we possibly can. And for the city to continue to, as you said, Connie, find ways to communicate more effectively, to make more of a two-way communication. And then if we have something that's really a big deal, we run a commission to begin with. We establish facts. We get us on the same page, at least in terms of what are the facts. Then we rearrange the facts as we see it. But we're operating on the basis of sort of what is. And I think that's important also.
Yep. Yep. So my pledge is to continue to try to do a better job. One of the things I already started was doing a wrap up with Jason Strong for Fairfield Media. We did go over the last council meeting because there's 4 ordinances that just went through the first reading. So I'm hoping again that's another venue that will keep people informed. But also we want to do some more things with our city staff, get that out there. In different departments, what's happening at streets, what's happening at wastewater, what's happening at Park and Rec, do another round of that. Because I did hear that people really like that. I did that couple of years ago, maybe. I can't remember. 2 years ago, 3 years
Wonderful.
ago.
Yep.
And people found that really useful. So it's time for another round of that too.
That's great. Connie, thank you very much for your time. This will not be our last conversation, but it's always a pleasure to be with you and to really help with all of us here build the vision of a Fairfield that we want. So thank
Yep.
you very much.
Yep. And thanks for all your work, Bob.